We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And you're listening to Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio American Network. I remain your host, Mark Angelides, and we're joined today by Liberty Nation's national security correspondent, Dave Patterson. Thanks for coming in, Dave.
Happy to be with you, Mark, always.
So, Dave, it seems to me that things are really heating up over on the Ukraine-Russia borders and the situations there, especially with Pete Hegseth, National Security Secretary, Defense Secretary, and J.D. Vance going to the Munich Security Conference and laying out some incredibly, well, I don't think they're that stringent on a personal level, but what a lot of the world's media say are some very stringent demands for how to negotiate a peace settlement. What were the big highlights out of these recent visits for you?
Well, I think the first is that when Secretary Hegseth basically and unapologetically just laid it out, and he started to elaborate on what I refer to as the Trump Doctrine, and effectively what that is it's a dose of reality. I mean, it's not like it's on the margin or something that seems unrealistic. It is the most realistic, actually, when you look at the United States and the problems that the United States has. And I see it as kind of threefold. First of all, the United States is going to be more involved with its own threats. And obviously, he laid it out. It was our southern border and China. And secondly, it's going to be more engaged with its neighbors to the south and north because they're the most immediate transactional partners. And lastly, the United States is going to be a complementary force to Europe, not a guiding or not a burden-holding force. And so it's going to be complementary yet still supportive, because we have equities and Europe has equities in the United States, and you just can't deny that. But there's a logic behind this, and that if Europe becomes stronger, and stronger when I mean that they're picking up more of their defense, more of the intellectual burden of where they are and what they have to do in order to be successful in a world where you have Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea, which I don't think Europe fully appreciates. But as they become stronger, then the partnership with the United States becomes more equitable. And so the United States will have to and needs to have to depend on Europe in thwarting and being a bulwark against China, and they can't do it with a weakened Europe.
So a couple of things I want to pick up on that, Dave, is you say that about how the U.S. will be more of a complementary source of guidance, rather than not a free source of guidance, complementary as in addition to source of guidance, rather than bringing things together and leading a coalition of nations. Now, there was this idea that under Joe Biden, American leadership was back. And as far as I can tell, that was an utter falsity put forward, maybe even perhaps to Joe Biden himself, with the weaselly words of the European internationalists or globalists saying, "Oh, look, we've got this great leader in Joe Biden." But really, what they wanted was somebody that they could push around, do what they want, but who would foot the bill without question. What do you make of that, by the way? Do you think I've got that pretty much right?
I think you're right. I think you're right to an extent. But at the same time, I have to bring up the fact that Joe Biden was not the leader.
Sure, that's my point, yeah.
Jens Stoltenberg was the leader. Jens Stoltenberg brought Europe together to face Ukraine, not Joe Biden. And it was a mythology that, to your point, that the European leaders kind of watered and nurtured, that he was somehow leading this band. I don't think that was ever true.
Yeah, Jens Stoltenberg, the leader, I've forgotten his title. Is he the general secretary? You know, regardless of what you think of the organization, he was a firm leader with a clear direction in what he wanted the group to achieve.
That's right. And not only that, but he understood the emerging problem for Europe with the Indo-Pacific. Remember, he took a very important trip out to South Korea. And so he got it. Interestingly enough, Root also has come around and said, yeah, we're going to have to spend more because I think, what you think is where you are. And in this position, I think he can see easily that it's not working, that you have, I know the Europeans hate this, but old Europe has lagged behind new Europe. You have the Baltics and the accessions of the former Soviet Union, and they're far more enthusiastic because they know what the consequences are and have lived under them, and so they're working very diligently. Poland, of course, is the star here.
Poland, Hungary. I've forgotten what they're called together. The Visegrad group. Visegrad
right.
nations. And they really do seem to have a clear understanding of what terror lies in the coming direction, because for them it's their past, and it's not as though it's their past 100 years ago. It's their past in my lifetime. It's you travel around these areas and
it's 34 years ago.
You see the concrete monstrosities that with essentially what they thought of as at the top, the leaders of thought of as, this is how people are. We can put them in the little boxes made of ticky-tacky, concrete ticky-tacky, and it's an ugliness, but it's a reminder as well that life under these regimes is ugly and brutal. I'm going to play you a very short clip, Dave, of Secretary Hegseth and his message to the partners in Europe.
Well, I will state definitively, as I did in Brussels, that America is committed to the NATO alliance. Our message has been, and as we discussed, we believe heard loud and clear, that member countries in NATO need to spend more, need to invest more, need to have more skin in the game for their collective defense. That is not just a suggestion from the United States of America. That is a direct request, which we will follow up on as a reflection of their desire and commitment to actually defend their own backyard. That's a serious aspect of NATO becoming a serious alliance in the future.
What do you make of that, Dave?
Well, going a little bit further in what he said, I mean, he just told the truth. I mean, there are things that there are mythologies that the United States and Europe have fed into, and one of them is that if we just give Ukraine enough materials, war materials, arms, ammunition, they will be able to drive the Russians out. That is patently false. That is not going to happen, and it's a fool's errand to suggest that it will. And yet Biden to the end held on to as long as it takes, but what he didn't say, as much as it takes. And the American taxpayer simply will not brook the second part of that. But the Europeans believe that as well. And that's what's troubling, is that you had these enablers gathering, and they all bought into the same mythology. And when President Barack Obama failed to do anything in April of 2014, and Russia annexed Crimea, the Donetsk region, and the Luhansk region, the die was cast. And to suggest that Russia is going to leave these is ridiculous, and they're not.
Well, we're going to discuss what an actual peace deal looks like in reality after this short break. Don't go anywhere.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.